the chicken.
Well, it's been a long time coming, but we finally got here. To wrap up this Kong-a-thon, we're looking at the latest games in the whole dang series with Donkey Kong Country Returns and its sequel, Tropical Freeze. If you know these games like I do, we can agree they're top tier games. No one's breaking new ground saying that. So like my other Donkey Kong videos, I'll talk about the customary review stuff when it strikes me, but I'll also share the stories I have playing these games and just general gushing because I love them so much. I'm also looking at the original releases primarily. At the time of writing, Returns is returning for the umpteenth time, but the original is where most of my memories lie. Hence why I'm showing it in its original context. I'll bring up Returns 3D where I can, and the Switch port for Tropical Freeze? Well, I haven't actually played that one, isn't that weird? Anyway, let's start off with Returns, and I've talked about its history in the past, but here's some cliff notes. During DK's couch surfing days circa 2004, Texas-based studio Retro Studios was deep in the Metroid trenches. They wanted to branch out to other IP though, with Donkey Kong being on the table. But Nintendo needed Retro to make games they weren't gonna make themselves, so in the Metroid trenches they stayed. Come early 2008, Shigeru Miyamoto was itching for a new Donkey Kong Country, and Retro, having finished Prime 3 and some key staff leaving the studio, were ready to take on the job. And we've since learned more devs left when management said DK was their next project, but I guess I won't hold it against anybody. The whole situation was described as fate, and Returns was codenamed F8 during development as a result. This would also be the first Donkey Kong Country with zero involvement from the guys at Rare, but there were a few veterans on the Nintendo side. Returns producer Kensuke Tanabe did localization for the first game and even visited Rare during its development. And before becoming Retro's president, Michael Kelbaugh was a tester for the Country games, and also gave a stellar performance in the DKC Exposed VHS.
But today we got the cream of banana soup, the banana and peanut butter sandwich.
And Miyamoto was there for moral support and to lend bits of advice like, Donkey Kong is my firstborn child, you better not screw this up. Oh, and could you make him blow on stuff? That'd be cool. To sum up my personal Return story, I was praying for a new Donkey Kong game in the late 2000s, and one Friday night during E3 2010, I was watching Game Trailers TV on Spike and see a flash of my prayers being answered. Donkey Kong Country Returns. Then I saw the full trailer the next day, and I didn't know jack about Retro's pedigree back then. All that mattered was that this looked good. From June to November 2010, I waited for Returns with bated breath, absorbing all the coverage I could find. And when November 21st finally came, life never felt so good up to that point. I even got the experience of reading a DKC manual on the ride home, for the second time in 1 month actually. Cranky Kong even showed up to do his usual shtick, which was a really nice gesture, even if his writing ain't that biting. Sorry, senior moment. The game's setup takes us back to Donkey Kong Island, now sporting a volcano, which erupts and lets out a group called the Tiki Tak tribe who hypnotize the wildlife into stealing DK's bananas. They try to hypnotize DK too, but he no-sells them, and I figured it's because he was smart, not dumb like everybody else thinks. Diddy and Rambi weren't affected, and they're pretty self-aware. So it's up to the Kongs to save their friends by taking them out with blunt force, I guess, and get their bananas back once again. A familiar setup, but this was, as the game case put it, an all-new adventure. Not that it took previous games into account much, or that any old faces outside the bare essentials showed up. And it's hilarious, Retro played the DKC and LAN games for research to get things right by fans. But character-wise, they said, yeah, so who are we bringing back? Nobody? That's a great idea! In a Kotaku interview, Tanabe had the gall to say, oh, we'll let fans see for themselves who shows up during the game. And he said that like there were more than 3 characters. Apparently, Miyamoto only wanted to draw from the series up to a certain point. I didn't know that point was a beta build of the first game. Returns' promo material kept saying the Tikis hypnotized DK's animal friends, so I thought we'd see, you know, his canonical animal friends, buddies if you will. Rambi was the only one they showed in trailers, so naive little me thought, well, maybe we have to save the others and we can ride them later. But nope, these friends are nondescript elephant, giraffe, zebra, squirrel. They show up in the background here and there, but they don't even have names. What kind of friends are those? You're gonna give this giraffe a pair of shades and not name it? You're gonna make this pig character show up everywhere and call him Tutorial Pig, not even Hamilton or something stupid like that? What was going on over at Retro? I might sound a bit harsh, but you know, when there's more direct references to the original Donkey Kong arcade game than DKC here, it kinda drives you mad thinking back. I remember being genuinely upset the Snaggle's enemies weren't chomps, and how the chomp's name was given to these piranha plants, almost like they did that on purpose. They do that again with Puffed Ups in Tropical Freeze, except their Puffed Ups are spelled with 2 F's. Ooh. Ugh. Balloons not having Kong faces felt like a personal attack back then, but they do get points for being useful in-universe. Never thought about them bringing the Kongs back into the level. And while characters are missing, we got familiar set pieces, elements like minecart, banana coins, Kong letters. Tons of remakes and reboots play it safe, but Returns is a good mix of old and new. For gameplay mechanics, the mid-air roll is something I didn't think would work outside the SNES games, or at least look weird, but they pulled it off. And no one ever brings this up, but in Country 1, jumping on 8 baddies in a row while airborne nets you an extra life. As rare as that is, they found a way to bring it back, and they have all my respect for it. I'll also defend the idea of making a new villain group with the Tikis. Thematically, they fit Donkey Kong perfectly, and I like their designs, motivation, and them watching you in boss fights hints at some personality. Tiki Tong himself is cool too, even though I originally thought the tower he chilled in was the big bad. But all that said, the Kremlings still had more charisma. And I feel it would be easier to accept their absence if the game didn't allude to them, like with the whole factory world. The name's different, but come on, it's a factory on Donkey Kong Island. What do you want me to think? No way the Tikis made this. These are the remnants of Kremkrok Industries. Retro got closer to capturing that Kremling magic with the Snowmads, but I don't hate the Tikis, and I love the idea of DK having a rogues gallery. I mean, the more faces I can smack about, the better. Speaking of, if you don't give these Tikis the business, they lunge at you. Yes, you, like a Metroid who skipped lunch. It's legit spooky and makes you think you let loose something bad into the world, so there, that's one thing they got over the Kremlings. Talking Returns levels, I love how most of them tell a story. Look at all the details and you can pinpoint the beginning, middle, and end. And after the setup, it's usually non-stop action until the end goal. Returns keeps you on your toes and almost never has a dull moment. It's always great when stages do cool camera tricks or shoot you into the background, then back into the foreground, or when stuff flies into the next dimension. Like, no kidding, when you crash a minecart, these guys go flying at you. No wonder they put this on 3DS. Speaking of the minecart levels, some think Returns has too many, but I personally couldn't get enough of them. Everyone remembers them from Country 1, specifically with the minecart aesthetic, but then you realize there's only 2 of them. I think Retro was just making up for lost time, and they make the SNES stages look like baby stuff. The first stage is the lazy river of minecarts with a chill Minecart Madness remix just getting you back in the saddle. That said, this big leap still gives me tingles, like the game is saying, yeah, we're back, feels good, don't it? But after that, it's no mercy. Now you're avoiding falling crystals that destroy the track in front of you, jumping from railways, narrowly escaping certain death, riding carts through molten lava. It's a madhouse! Bombs Away is my favorite kart stage here, bar none. Special mention to this mole miner who's on a mission to kill you dead. This final bit here, oh man, even now I laughed like I was on a roller coaster. They should have based the ride at Universal on this. I always try doing it in one go too, because when coupled with the music here, it is a total thrill. And check out the grip and trip stage in co-op. I got myself in the background while my brother was still in the foreground. Props to whoever programmed that to work properly, because that was sick. Another great stage is Muncher Marathon, which will have arachnophobes in shock and might just turn you into one. It starts off chill enough until you see those webs and egg sacs everywhere and you think, no, they wouldn't do that to me, right? And then the game takes a page from Aqua Teen's Markula and just goes,
release the brood.
One thing Returns dropped the ball on stage-wise was the lack of water levels, which Retro cut for being too slow for their liking. Truthfully, they weren't my favorite levels either, but it still gutted me seeing them gone. Their potential in a modern game had my mind swimming. unlike the Kongs who die the instant they touch water. My coping mechanism for that was, well, it's been a long time since the last DKC, maybe they just forgot how to swim. I do like how they squeezed in an aquatic ambience remix, even if it doesn't quite fit the stage it's in. Now the silhouette levels I think are Returns' equivalent to water levels. Breathtakingly beautiful and stick out as a defining moment. I couldn't get enough of these. And I mean, the whole game is beautifully crafted. In level 1, you can see your end goal from the treehouse, and I love details like that. I also love how a world's first stage has stuff from the previous world trailing off as you go along. Makes everything feel connected. This hit hard in the forest world where at the start of Vine Valley, well, there's no Vine or Valley. That is until you blast your way to the surface, you see more greenery, and then... Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. On the topic of music, done by Kenji Yamamoto and his crew, they did some great remixes from Country 1, and their original stuff's no slouch either. The Rocket Barrel themes speak to my swing-loving soul like nothing else. I am always happy to hear them. Colonel Pluck's theme is pretty sweet too, and reminds me a lot of Crash Bandicoot. Like, I can vividly see Crash running for his life to it. Quick aside, sometimes I wish Colonel Pluck was a jungle fowl and not just straight chicken, but he's still cool. For remixes, they often emphasize bits that were there in the original, but I never noticed before. Then when going back to Country 1, I heard those bits and it blew my mind. Stuff like the percussion in DK Island Swing before the big crescendo. Ooh, get a load of me using musical terminology. Then there's extensions to tracks like Treetop Rock, where they fit so well, they feel like they were always there. Every world also has its own map theme remix, which almost makes up for said worlds having the most boring names imaginable. And for some more audio trivia, while the Kongs are voiced by their usual actors from Japan, Returns used Texas-based voices for stuff like the enemies. These little biters share a voice with a certain furry Straw Hat, and I've heard rumors Tiki Tong and Lord Frederick share one with Shenron from Dragon Ball. Can't confirm that last one, so one of you out there, go to a convention and get the answer for me. Alright, let's talk co-op for a bit. I played the whole game in co-op the first time through, which is a blast with someone of similar skill. Though, getting footage, you might not think we were ever good at this. We blew through so many lives, but we still had fun. For minecarts, rocket barrels, or Rambi where one guy takes control, we took turns after each checkpoint or death, whatever came first. Single player in my eyes is a downgrade from co-op, mainly cause DK barrels are in short supply. Lose Diddy and depending on the stage, you might not see him again. Early game throws you a bone sometimes, but most levels have just one. Tidal Terror has more regular barrels than DK ones, like what's that about? Not only does Diddy make things manageable, he makes things more fun, what with his jetpack and the infinite Kong roll. I could play co-op for hours, but after a solo session, I feel wiped. DK with no bells and whistles, well, there's a reason I never picked him in co-op. Sorry, bro. Maybe the time attack mode had something to do with that, which I fittingly spent hours playing back in the day. But starve me for barrels there, not the main adventure. And mirror mode, like wow, a whole mode where Diddy's gone, plus no items, flipped screen, and one hit point. Doesn't that sound like fun? And yeah, I did it, but I don't make smart choices. I'm a YouTuber for crying out loud. And shoot, I remember sometimes for mirror mode, I would take a small mirror my mom had in the bathroom, put it parallel to the TV, and play it through the mirror to beat a few stages. Whatever you gotta do. If you're waiting for me to complain about the motion controls, that's not on the agenda. One thing that did annoy me was latching onto DK in co-op. If either player presses B, you become one, and that's killed us countless times. Also pushing A to jump to get extra height, that never worked 100%. Just cause I can beat a K-Temple stage in one go after not playing it in years, that doesn't mean I wouldn't like that jump mechanic fixed, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, back to waggle controls, I know people can't stand them, but they never bothered me. Ground pounding had weight to it, and it felt great shaking the Wiimote and nunchuck for a beatdown. Heck, I consciously used them for Tropical Freeze. I even like how Returns HD has motion controls. But the thing is, those are optional, and it's nice folks have more ways to play now. I mean, before this, your only non-waggle option was Returns 3D on 3DS, and as strange as this sounds, I took my time getting this one. I don't even have a physical copy. I got it in 2014 as a platinum reward from Club Nintendo. One of the first retail Nintendo games I got digitally, and the only one I got on 3DS because it took up so much space. That's what I get for not choosing Dylan's Rollin' Western. Before Returns HD, some saw this as the definitive version of Returns. Minimal compromises, minus frame rate, no motion controls, the new mode called New Mode that cuts you a break, and an actual 9th world with 8 new stages. But even with all that, the original is still my go-to. Not sure what it was, but I played Returns 3D super passively. Breaks between play sessions went from weeks to months at a time for me. Really, I just wanted to see those new levels, which were really good. Monster Games didn't miss a beat with these. Also, anyone out there play this in co-op? I can't find footage of this aside from a single trailer, so I'm betting it's an urban myth. Oh, and here's a real petty nitpick. This DK pad makes a different noise on the 3DS, and it's weak as all get out. What is that? Don't tell me the 3DS couldn't handle a little horn. So Returns was great, but I thought it would be a one and done affair. That's just how these things typically go. Even the ever-reliable Tanabe said, yeah, nothing's in the works, so I took that seriously. Then at E3 2013, they announced Tropical Freeze, and I was definitely excited, which has been recorded for posterity, don't seek it out, but my hype kinda built in the hours following the reveal. Dixie Kong was back, that was big. They said a 4th playable character was coming, that really had me hyped. Then when E3 started proper, I hear original series composer David Wise was coming back to do the music. If all that dropped at once, I would not have survived. Some weren't happy Retro was making this instead of a new Metroid, but I tuned all of that out. I do remember that Kotaku article calling this another damn DKC, and I never read it until making this video thinking it was rage bait. But the article just says, ooh, Tropical Freeze is a game you can buy soon. The thing's barely an article, that title was totally uncalled for. Later in December, we learned Cranky was that 4th playable character announced at Spike's Video Game Awards, and people were upset with that too, but I don't know why. Spike's demo was knuckle-dragging throwbacks, this reveal was made for him! And old fogies like me remember when Cranky took over Nintendo's Twitter for a day and made awful, awful memes. That's what happens when your wife becomes a ghost. They had some other interesting promos for this game that I want to spotlight. Because Canada's primary season is snow, we got an exclusive promotion called the Banana Mania Contest. Guess how many bananas were in this block of ice, and the grand prize was a ski trip in Whistler, BC, which I did not care for. My ski trips in school consisted of wiping out, heading to the lodge, and then tubing the rest of the day. Who's with me? What I liked about this promo was that it was hosted by a guy named AJ Fry. If you watched YTV in 07, 08, he was the first host of their Saturday morning block Crunch. And if Andy somehow stumbles upon this, I liked you too. AJ was a blast on YTV, so I felt bad not recognizing him right away, but to be fair, he didn't have his iconic hairdo. AJ's been doing this kind of stuff forever, especially with Nintendo of Canada. And somewhat related, there was a heat wave in summer 2024, and watching a report, he just popped up as a random civilian. That time though, I did recognize him. There was also an event in Toronto where you could play the game early and get yourself an official DK necktie. And thankfully, a friend of mine went on my behalf and got it for me. I will never forget that gesture, and it's definitely one of the coolest things I own. I'm actually wearing it as I record this. For some other ads, this one aired in North America and the UK, but across the pond it was narrated by the legendary Brian Blessed, and you think the casting guys knew he was in Tarzan? Then there's these Japanese ads where these guys play the game in Kong cosplay. They might just be good actors, but they look and sound like they are having the time of their lives, and they sell it so well. And the guy running his hands through his Dixie hair, it's so great. Dixie needs to do that in a game someday. On to the story, we open with DK celebrating his birthday when across the ocean, a Viking group called the Snowmads set their sights on DK Island. Maybe they know of its legendary status, but whatever they think, they make it their property and send the Kongs packing in one fell swoop. Now you gotta travel across 6 islands to get back home and undo that deep freeze. I love this setup. The bad guys have already won and corrupted something precious, and the snowmads themselves are super charming. Watching the first trailer and hearing Satoru Iwata say Arctic Vikings were the villains, I perked up immediately. And in a developer direct when Tanabe compared Tropical Freeze to a road movie, man, they were just cherry picking my favorite things ever. And this sequel fixes just about everything Returns fumbled on. More returning characters, water levels, more forgiving difficulty, a map screen with the Kongs on it, an actual name for the pig, which, did you know he's called Chop Sensei in Japan? That's awesome. And there is a stupid amount of detail everywhere. I'll never not be impressed seeing all of Waldo's animations for getting hit from behind. Jeez, they even brought back the bonus jingle from Country 1. And even the screaming pillars made the cut. Oh, I'm sorry. Flaming falling totem poles according to Prima. Stupid. DK feels much better to control too. He's still got weight, but not as lumbering as before, and I don't mind playing as him. And at Funky's shop, you can buy Kong barrels, which is a godsend as long as you don't already have a Kong going in a level or it gets used up immediately. So close. Shocking absolutely no one, Dixie is my favorite Kong here, but that's fine. I have a personal bias towards her, as any fan of hers should. And her voice actor really gave it her all. She has never sounded cuter, and man, when she dies, she dies. Another change up here is the pluck move, which Tanabe took from his time directing Mario Bros. 2 Doki Doki Panic Edition. It's much better for finding stuff while keeping the pace of a level snappy. Blowing was cute and all, but when Miyamoto suggested it, I'm sure no one at Retro wanted to pipe up and say, "Man, are you out of your mind?" But since he was more hands-off here, they did something truly befitting of a gorilla. Tropical Freeze wasn't just Retro's doing though. Monster Games was brought on too, cause Retro was so impressed/envious of their work on Returns 3D. You know, if they weren't bought by some company to make racing games till the end of time, they could have made a third DKC. As mentioned earlier, the soundtrack was mainly done by David Wise, being his first Donkey Kong soundtrack since Diddy Kong Racing DS. Yeah, not that big a gap, is it? Wise and Kelba had kept in touch since their days working on DKC1, and in a Games TM interview, Kelba said they tried getting Wise for Returns, but he was unavailable. Then at GDC 2011, 3 months after Returns launched, the two bumped into each other. Kelba was like, "Donkey Kong?" And Wise was like, "Donkey Kong." And with that came one of the greatest soundtracks to grace us as a species. If you're not smitten by the end of the opening cutscene, you're clinically dead. Them's the rules. A personal favorite among favorites is Jammin' Jams. Only gets used in one stage, but what a standout track. It's been my go-to script writing music since 2014. Just gets the creative juices jammin'. A couple other tracks reminded me of his work in Country 3 on Game Boy Advance, and having played Star Fox Adventures in 2024, I heard Tropical Freeze in there too. Kenji Yamamoto and his crew helped with music as well. In fact, Yamamoto's responsible for the choir bits in Grassland Groove. He knew some Nintendo staff who had singing chops, and they made beautiful music together. That choir's the first thing you hear when you boot it up on Wii U, so I getcha if you think this is the best version. And when the credits have that saxophone solo kick in, another Wii U exclusive, that's Retro's own Peter Nielsen. All the music guys have my undying gratitude. I said stages and Returns told a story, but in Tropical Freeze, entire worlds tell a story. My favorite is Juicy Jungle, which takes us through a factory where we see the snowmads harvesting fruit to make popsicles and junk, all wrapping up with the fight against Bashmaster. Take two of my favorite DK world themes and meshing them together like that, how do they do it? Overall, the stages are brimming with life and creativity. Windmill Hills, I will never get tired of seeing those goats in the background. But the big takeaway for everyone has always been Grassland Groove. Playing it again, my brother and I agreed this one stage creatively outdoes anything Returns did. And that game was bombastic, but the sequel makes it look like child's play in comparison. Here's an example for ya. Trunk Twister is the first minecart stage here, and even still, it's like nothing that came before it. The dynamic camera angles, enemies straight walking on the track, and sweet lord, the music! Hearing it took me back to driving the paddy wagon in the SpongeBob movie game. I'm not riding through the dark mines, I'm on a road trip in a buddy comedy. Tanabe was right on the money. And the best bit is this cutscene right here. Only time that ever happens in the game, and it puts a big stupid grin on my face every time. Heck, I scream along with them! This stage lived in my head for months when I saw the E3 B-roll. I could not wait to play it. And the other minecart stages, my god! Sawmill Thrill makes you think the stage is done 1/3 in and then your cart turns into a wood raft and you're riding it in the water. And High Tide Ride is, look at it! It's straight out of Donkey Kong 64! Then we got stages that have two gimmicks at once, like water and silhouette levels, rocket barrels and minecarts. This rocket barrel stage that ends with you in a giant snowball. I was thinking, this is real? I get to play this? No fooling? And that feeling hasn't gone away. While I've never stopped praising this game, when getting footage, it had been a while since I last played it. But a few minutes into stage 1, scratch that, the first few seconds of stage 1 had me achieve transcendence. Seeing that plane crash to the ground and DK bust out, I was like, I'm home. I'm back home. And then I see the island in the distance and go, oh, I gotta get back home. I'm glad Retro could build on the world they made with Returns, making their own nostalgic callbacks and expanding on old ideas. Snaggles are back, and now that you can swim again, you can get a closer look at them. Whatever I said about them before, it's water under the bridge. They've earned the right to be a Lego. And I loved Squidicus from day one, so again, facing him in his element made him even scarier. All to the tune of Lockjaw's Saga, which should honestly be called Squidicus Saga from now on.
I know you're in here.
Also loved taking him out by the end. That's what we call closure. For other callbacks, DK Island is full of them. Each stage represents a world from Returns, and not only do the landmarks mean something now, but seeing them frozen hits doubly hard and makes me want to set things right. Mugly statues, the robot eye, tiki totems, the city of mole people, and the Mega Squeakly. I was so happy seeing her again, but she kinda had this coming. And Mugly himself cameos in this diorama. I really like Mugly. Getting to the top of the volcano in Returns was cool, but having the final boss take place in the volcano this time? Heck yeah. With that, let's talk about Lord Frederick a bit. His moves and mannerisms are one big tribute to King K. Rool, and I genuinely appreciate the effort. The one thing I don't like is that he's just another Viking walrus. I honestly think some of his minions look cooler than him. I don't know, make him a wolverine, a muskox, a moose, woolly mammoth, anything's better than another walrus. Some also wished Frederick was King K. Rool in disguise, but I feel that would have undermined him even more, and K. Rool without the Kremlings doesn't feel right. I'd hate for him to take off the costume like, it's me! I was the walrus all along! But we're probably never gonna see him again, so no big deal. Any other issues I have, they're pretty minimal. The bosses are great, but they go on a little long, and when you screw up, it is so deflating. I also wish I could play as any Kong I wanted in single player, which the new hard mode lets you do, so I don't know why they tease us like that. I also call these blue Kong letters Shadow Kong letters, cause I just think that sounds really cool. Ungard also should have been in the water stages, which almost happened, but Retro is still in the business of breaking hearts. And if Returns did one thing better, it's those boss beatdowns. They are leagues more energetic. Tropical Freeze has no boss defeated cutscene or anything. It just irises out to this screen like, yeah, you played Returns, you know the drill. But I still adore Tropical Freeze. Definitely an all-time favorite and is nay unbudgeable. It might even be my favorite Donkey Kong Country, but I say that with a bit of hesitation because every game in the series is amazing. I'm gonna give a cop-out answer and say my favorite DKC is the next one. And I say this knowing how long it's been since the last one came out, but I know we'll get something one of these days. I mean, DK's riding pretty high lately. Lego sets, the Mario movie, NSO releases, K. Rool and Smash, a theme park expansion I'll never be able to go to, everything but a new game, but I know this ain't for nothing. For now though, I'm happy the whole DKC lineage is playable on one system, minus the GBA remakes and some other bits and pieces, but that's still very, very good. And when we get something new, I'll be on that faster than you can say banana slamma. But if you're in the mood for longer form DK discussion, I'm gonna recommend the Conversation podcast, where you'll get just that. I'm lucky to be a semi-regular guest host, so maybe give those episodes a listen if you want. But again, I thank you all for joining me for this marathon. Glad I could share my love for my favorite video game series with ya. Here's hoping I can do it again soon-ish. And if you guys enjoyed what you saw, feel free to give this video a like, a share, subscribe, check out my social media pages, my Patreon page where you can see videos like this before they go public, all that good stuff I always go on about. Speaking of the Patreon, I want to give a special shout out to my top supporters, Lars Niswant and Terra Drive. Your support means more than you know. Thanks so much, guys. And be sure to share your memories of Returns and Tropical Freeze in the comments below. I love to read them. And while you're here, feel free to check out the videos I got on screen. I enjoyed making them, hopefully you'll enjoy watching them. And with all that said, I will see you guys next time. Later.